Everyone.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the book reading. My name is Panther Queen, and I will be reading our Statement of Unity. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and the Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, and the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, started that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle, he said. It's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they sought to keep divided. The class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush the emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation by upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other Rainbow Coalition members. We established our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all the organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. 1, history has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class, liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people, boots on the ground. All members of the coalition, the new African Black Panther Party, American Indian Movement, Indiana and Kentucky, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, Fury, Feminist Uprising to Resist Inequality and Exploitation, August 21st, 2021.
Also, sis, I just want to mention the Guardian Rebellion is part of the Second Rainbow Coalition as well. I
Okay.
thank you. And I'm sorry that I exit off. Would you like for me to take over the disciplinary rules?
Yes, you can, my sister.
Okay. As far as the Second Rainbow Coalition and the Uniting Panther movement, we ask that every member and supporter that's on this feed as well as the Zoom meeting, that we adhere to the 6 disciplinary rules. And the 6 disciplinary rules are: number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. 2nd, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition businesses and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremities of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And in addition to that, for those who are new and for those who have been here, we are going to continue with My People Are Rising by Aaron Dixon, where we're going to read the 2 assigned chapters in the book, which is 15, 16, which we have our moderator, Panther Queen, who's going to take over, as well as our moderator, Joe Gonzalez of Brown Berets. And we're going to continue to, I guess, have other people to introduce themselves if they haven't done so, or have they done that?
No, they haven't yet.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, what I'm gonna do is just say we're gonna, stick to these disciplinary rules. We are going to continue our conversation, try to get under, I would say 2 hours or an hour and a half, and we're gonna stick to the read as far as related matters, situations, or concerns related to the reading. So my name is Sister Anna, and I represent the Guardian Rebellion as well as the Second Rainbow Coalition Book Club. I am very elated to be here to not only read about the life journey of Aaron Dixon, as well as share his readings and thoughts with our outstanding moderators as well as our members here and supporters. And I just want to say I'm ready to get right into this read. So I welcome everyone. And Brother Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, sister. And I'm honored to be here in attendance on this book reading study group tonight. My name is Joe Gonzalez with Los Brown Berets, representative of La Mesa Nacional also, and working with AIM, the American Indian Movement, the New Black Panther parties, the Young Lords, High Thurman, and the Young Patriots, and so many other organizations that we have going on strong in this movement. So with all that being said, greetings, brothers and sisters, and it's an honor to be here once again this evening. And that's all.
That is great. Okay. I'm about to, and we do have our brother Chad out there. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly, sir?
Yeah, my name is Chad Nieves. I'm an Attica brother, and it's an honor to be here participating with y'all tonight. Like every night that when I can make it. Just recently I just got sick a little bit, so I was out of circulation. But I'm back, and I'm here tonight.
Good, good. Welcome, brother. And I pray that you have a speedy recovery, and I'm glad that you are joining us today. Okay, I'm just going to go down this list, and then I'm going to give it away to our sister, Panther.
If there
creation was for the reason in which they then put on to our people.
Let's see.
Hello?
Can
everybody
please mute their mics?
Yeah,
Now,
I just appreciate that everyone mute their mics. Chad, can you mute your mic? Yeah, everybody, can you mute your mic until we are ready for you to speak?
How you do this? How you mute it?
Okay, what you do is just go to your, go to your main screen and you should see the word mute on your left-hand side.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, let's see. We have two more people that's here. Would anybody like to just briefly introduce themselves? And then we're going to have our sister Panther Queen to moderate, as well as our brother Joe.
Oh, my name is Sayero. I'm with the Impedum, which is an arm of the African People's Socialist Party. I appreciate this is my second read that I'll be involved in. As we discuss this particular read, I intend to be fully involved and engaged, and appreciate the offer to come in. It's an honor. Uhuru.
Okay, Black Power. Okay, the next person, Miss Cyrene, would you like to briefly introduce yourself with your name and organization that you're a part of?
Right, thank you. Yes, my name is Sabrine and I am with Guardian Rebellion. This is my first read and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, sister, and welcome, welcome, welcome. And we have one of our legendary here, my sister, my queen, Cleo Silvers. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Cleo Silvers. I've been in the movement for about 55 years. I was a Black Panther and a Young Lord, and have been involved in labor and community organizing for all that time. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us again, Queen. And we have a sister here, Maeda. Would you, if I pray to God, I'm announcing.
It's Sister Maya Anakatak, and
Okay.
I'm a Black Panther, Black Rider. I am with the ministers. The minister was with the Sisters of Minister of Health, and I am your sister, and I am in the Sabian unity, the Sabian tribal, Indian tribal, Nuwabian.
Okay, thank you. Sister, would you like to take over and continue to read? And I just want to mention, I thank Brother Shamago Noble. I don't know if he's still on here, for being our IT guy. I don't know if he's able to put up the screen or not, but are you here, Brother Shamago? Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna.
He's there. He's on mute.
Oh, yes, he is on mute. Shamago, would you like to just give us a brief introduction?
He said that he would be in and out because I believe that he is working.
Okay.
So he said he'll be in and out.
Okay. Well,
Yes,
sister.
and thank him for, sorry to cut you off, sister, but thank him for his help, because I would not have been able to attend this evening if it wasn't for his assistance. So that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you know, Brother Joe, we're going to make it possible We're gonna make sure that you part of this,
We have to.
this read. Yes, we
If
will
we
work
do
this
not
out
do it, who's
together.
gonna do it? We're not gonna
Right.
rely on
Mhm.
others to do it and sit back and be patient and wait. We've been dormant too long. But
Yeah.
let me be quiet, let the sisters start reading or so forth. And if she posts it on her page, I can help and assist in reading.
Yes, I can
Okay.
share it. Let me introduce myself to everybody. My name is Panther Queen Christina, and I represent the Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers. I've been a part of their network for 3 years now. So
Okay.
let
Well,
me share the book if I can.
uh-huh.
Chapter 15, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can everybody see my screen? Can anybody see my
Yes,
screen or
I
not?
can see your screen, yes.
Okay. Can y'all see the book?
Yep,
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
Chapter 15, The Unromantic Revolution. Hang on to the world as it spins and just don't let the spin get you. Down things are moving fast. Hold on tight and you will last. Donna Hathaway, Someday We'll All Be Free, 1973. The revolution did not pause or slow down. There was no time for reflection or regards. It was sometimes difficult to distinguish right from wrong or truth from falsehood. Tensions between the Seattle chapter and the police had reached dangerous levels. When darkness fell, Madonna Hill became a no man's land. The cops would only come up to the hill in 3-car canvas, 4 cops deep, with shotguns protruding out of the windows. Madonna Hill was dubbed Pork Chop Hill, quote unquote, after a famous Korean War battle. One cloudy Sunday afternoon, party members had gathered at the office for the weekly political education classes. I was en route to the meeting in a car with Willie Brazer, Buddy Yates, and Law Jack when we found ourselves behind a police cruiser driving by a sergeant. He stopped in front of the office and peered in. Suddenly, Willie Blazer jumped out of our vehicle, ran up to the cop car, yanked open the door, and began tugging the shocked cop out of his car, yelling, "Pig, what are you doing here?" quote unquote. The sergeant must have pushed an emergency button because within seconds, cop cars descended out of the scene from every direction. Buddy, LoJack, and I got out of the car. Willie let go of the cop, and the 4 of us retreated across the street towards the office. The cops stayed in their cars, shotguns sticking out of their windows. Had they decided to start shooting, there was nowhere for us to go. For a few seconds, we stood looking at the cops while they looked at us, all wondering what would be the next move. The sergeant finally spoke, quote unquote, "This is a warning to you guys. We ready for anything." After the cops split. Another afternoon, we were in the office preparing for a meeting. There happened to be a bus stop right in front of the office. We had instructed the bus driver to park about 5 feet back so as not to block the front of the office. Most complained, but every now and then there would be a dissenter. A dark-haired bus driver pulled in front of the office and sat there, blocking our entrance. Elmer and Steve Phillips boarded the bus and commanded the driver to move. Quote unquote, "No, I'm not moving," he replied. Suddenly, Elmer and Steve pounced on the driver and grabbed his bus phone, ripped out the wires, and threw it onto the roof of the office building. The bus driver finally drove off. Eventually, the transit company sent some messengers over to negotiate on the bus stop issue. We still refused to allow them to fully block the front of our office. Meanwhile, A warrant was put out for my arrest for assault on the bus driver. The driver swore on the witnesses stand that I, not Elmer, had attacked him, even though Elmer got on the witness stand and testified that he had done it. I was the only one found guilty. Luckily, Judge Stokes was presiding over the proceedings. Judge Stokes was one of the few Black judges in town at that time, and I had gone to school with his daughter. Yet, even with the connections, I think we were all pleasantly surprised when he gave me probation and relieved me of jail time. Plenty of people were supportive of our chapter. People dropped off money, office equipment, and supplies, sometimes even weapons. Thus, when Jack, a short, stocky, bold, Scandinavian-looking dude showed up, we were inquisitive in spite of our skepticism. He was decked out in a 3/4 length black leather coat and a black beret, and had on a button Che Guevara, quote unquote. "Hey, my name's Jack," he said, extending his hand and giving me a firm handshake. Quote unquote, "I belong to the Communist Party on Mercier Island." We nodded and looked on, trying to size up this cat. He continued, quote unquote, "Yeah, I fought with Che and Fidel when they landed in Cuba." After we had listened with interest to several of his stories, he left and promised to come back, which he did. He took us out to his house where he lived with his 2 wives. He taught us revolutionary tactics, including how to make time bombs with a stick of dynamite and an alarm clock in a shoebox. Learning of his access to dynamite, we made arrangements for 2 cases of dynamite with nitroglycerin. The Modelo cocktails have served their purpose. Now it was time to move on to do something more effective. The plan was set. Jack would get the dynamite from his contact. Gary Owens and I would meet him near University of Washington campus. We picked him up without incident and headed to the office. When we got near a cop car that had been tailing us for a while, put on its flashing red lights and siren, we were all nervous, but Jack was sweating like a madman as he waited while the cops checked his ID. We were sure we would get busted. Luckily, a platoon of Panthers had seen us get stopped and ran down from the office to investigate, which spurred the cops to let us go. That was a close call. We buried one of the cases of dynamite in a wooden area and took the other case to the basement of my apartment, where we left it in the care of 2 comrades who volunteered to stand watch until we decided what to do with it. When we came back to check on it several hours later, the 2 comrades informed us that the cops had come by and confiscated the case of dynamite. A very fishy story, but somehow we overlooked it at the time. As a matter of fact, one night, a week later, these same comrades, along with Curtis Harris, decided they would escort me home from the office, which I found unusual. I usually walked by myself or was accompanied by Lou Jack. Besides, I knew these guys from high school, and they didn't have a political bone in their body. They pretty much hung out with the thug crowd. When we turned a corner, a slow-moving police cruiser appeared. Suddenly, Curtis pulled out his .45 and fired in the direction of the cop car. A moment later, when I looked around, Curtis and the other 2 had disappeared, and I was alone, knowing full well the place was quickly be covered with cops. I ran up the stairs of Millicent's house nearby and into the backyard. Within minutes, I could hear cars filling the streets, doors opening and closing, and the voices of desperate, angry white men getting closer. The backyard was completely enclosed by 10-foot-high, thick green bushes. There was no escape, and I could hear the voices getting louder, quickly coming my way. I pulled out my 9mm and braced for the worst. Just then, the back door of the house opened, and out stepped Mr. Millison. He silently motioned me inside. I ran in with my piece in my hand just as the cops were entering the yard with their guns drawn. Mr. Millison drew me into the living room where we sat in the darkness with his family, watching the actions out the windows. We could see the cops frantically searching for me under cars and behind buildings, but I was nowhere to be found. Elmer, Michael, and I had grown up with the Millicents. The family had 7 kids. Their daughter, Wanda, had a strong crush on me in the 6th grade. My brothers and I had played football, basketball, and tennis with Wayne and Gary. However, when Elmis and I joined the party, Mr. Millicent ordered his children not to have, I'm sorry. I lost my place. The family, 7 kids, my brother. However, when Elmer and I joined the party, Mr. Millison ordered his children not to have anything to do with us, which was understandable. I had observed Mr. Millison for many years. He was very light complected, conservative Texan who seldom smiled and was known for his strictness. He worked hard and sent all his kids to Catholic school. He was the last person I would have thought would risk his position and family to save a crazy young revolutionary. But he did, and he will forever remain in my heart. After the cops gave up, I ran home, thankful that I had been spared another day. It was unsettling, to say the least, that Curtis and the other 2 would fire at the pigs without letting me know and then disappear. I was still of the mind that if you were Black and down for the cause, you were unquestionable. But in reality, there were far too many men and women who looked and acted the part, who were willing to compromise themselves as human beings for a few dollars, for a shorter prison sentence, or just for the thrill of playing both sides. Informants had infiltrated just about every party chapter, quite heavily in some places, and Seattle was no exception. I heard later from sources on the streets that the cops had a price on my head. They thought that killing me would bring an end to all their worries. The city had already tried to buy me out, sending a light-complected Black man, casually dressed, to the office a few months earlier. Quote unquote, "Hello, Mr. Dixon," he began. His polite demeanor reminded me of my father. Quote unquote, "The city of Seattle would like to offer you a position with the city at a $35,000 a year," he said, providing no further details or information about the job. That was a large amount of money to offer anyone, let alone a 19-year-old, but I turned him down politely. He said with a smile, quote unquote, "Well, if you change your mind, give me a call." And he handed me his card and left. That summer, for the first time, militant organizations in the Seattle Black community came together in a town meeting with the aim of forming a united front for greater organizing power. The groups included Congress of Radical Equality, CORE, and Black United Front, the African American Journal, the Black Panther Party, and a few others, as well as individual activists like Daisy Boyetta. That night, it was a packed house in the YMCA on Madison, with mostly older members of the community. There were many impassioned speeches against the white system and well against Uncle Tom's, considered complacent with the man. Toward the end, I was nominated to head this united coalition of militants. I strolled to the front of the room, took the mic, and spouted some revolutionary rhetoric. They were looking to me for the answers to their dilemmas, answers I did not have. I was just a 19-year-old idealist doing my best to run the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party. I was ill prepared to take advantage of the brief moment of unity, and nothing ever came of the opportunity. Towards the end of the summer, we lost a very dedicated, beloved comrade, but not at the hands of the police. 17-year-old Henry Boyer came to the aid of his distraught mother, who was being attacked by her boyfriend. Henry was big and thick for his age, willing and able to give someone a good ass kicking if he wanted to. The man grabbed Henry's shotgun and killed him. It was incredibly sad to lose Henry in this way. He had a lot of potential, not only as a revolutionary, but also as a valuable asset to humanity. Everybody loved Henry, and to honor our first fallen comrade, we wanted to send him away in splendid fashion. Nafasi, Madu Allen, and other sisters made beautiful baby blue African inspired robes for the comrade sisters. And all the comrade brothers wore full Panther uniform. We had a double line of nearly 200 Panthers standing at attention, extending all the way down the block on either side of Angluis funeral home. It was inspiring. Revolutionary farewell for our beloved comrade. The next day, the Seattle Post Intelligencer reported that it was the largest funeral in the history of Washington state. A week after the funeral, Mr. Angelus, the funeral director, called and asked for Elmer and me to come over to the funeral home. When we arrived, he took us back into a side room full of caskets. It was dark and very eerie. He opened one of the caskets, and inside were more than a dozen rifles. Quote unquote, "These are for you, brothers." We couldn't believe our eyes. They were Argentine British 303 rifles. We thanked him and took them away, though we never used these weapons. We were deeply appreciative of his gesture of support. There weren't any other professional Black people willing to risk their livelihood by giving us arms. We considered this a revolutionary act by Mr. Angelus. Voodoo Man had moved to a house near the office. After I joined the party, I had nearly really trusted him anymore. He was definitely more than a little crazy and evil, and even traveled to Oakland in an attempt to show discord between the Seattle chapter and national headquarters. He tried to speak with Bobby Seale about me, but the chairman sent him on his way. As the environment became increasingly dangerous, Voodoo Man, along with his white girlfriend, disappeared into the night, leaving behind everything in the house. We never heard from him again. As summer drew to an end, I took a much needed trip to Oakland to restore myself, reinforce my revolutionary direction, and gain some fortification against the struggles I was facing within the Seattle chapter. There had already been an assassination attempt by the police. The chapter had obviously been infiltrated. I was grappling with a general lack of discipline and insubordination among party members, as well as older comrades who questioned my authority. And the death of Henry Boyer had been difficult for everyone. It was always good and invigorating to see Matilda Landon and Randy Williams, Tommy Jones, and Robert Bay. My timing was good. Tommy and Robert were going down to the Monterey Jazz Festival to set up a booth in the concession area to sell the party's posters, books, cards, Black Panther papers, and Black Panther papers. I was able to tag along, being away from the streets of Seattle in the sun of Monterey with Tommy and Big Bay was just what I needed. We were able to enjoy the silky voice of Chairman McRae and listen to the stellar sounds of the modern jazz quartet. We even ran into Eldridge and Kathleen Cleaver and Bobby and R.T. Seal. A few tense incidents occurred, one while manning our booth. Some Los Angeles brothers wearing overalls, members of a gang known as the Farmers, came by our booth and made some proactive remarks, causing Tommy to go for his stub nose 38. At one point, it looked like we were going to have to throw down with these political jackasses the Farmers had formed out of the ashes of the Watts riots. Apparently, due to their Black nationalism stance, they had positioned themselves as adversaries of the party. But all in all, it was a peaceful trip. It would be the last time I would spend real time with Tommy, who had recently been appointed to the rank of captain and given his own office to run in West Oakland, down on 7th Street. He still looked out for me, treating me like a little brother. It had been a wild summer, the most rebellious in modern U.S. history, and many of the new chapters were going through similar growing pains as we were in Seattle. We were all trying to understand what our role was to be as an organization and trying to come to grips with our deep hatred towards the police and all they represented. The government was adjusting as well, and their tactics would soon become much more deadly for the Black Panther Party. We had no idea what lay ahead, no inkling of the undercover operation that was silently being launched against us. And that's the end of chapter 15. Would somebody else like to take chapter 16?
Oh, I'll read it.
Okay.
Sometimes in winter, forgotten memories remember you behind the trees with leaves that cry, blood, sweat, and tears. Sometimes in winter, 1968. On September 8th, 1968, Huey P. Newton was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, which carried a 2 to 5 year sentence. Charles Gary, Huey's attorney and the legal counsel for the Black Panther Party, had developed a solid case for Huey's innocence. The prosecution's one eyewitness, an Oakland bus driver by the name of Greer, had told the police he had a clear view of the shooter. Greer had, in fact, stated on tape that he did not see the shooter. Charles Gary was able to get this evidence admitted in court, but it was never disclosed to the jury. Huey had been railroaded. While we were angry about Huey being railroaded, we also breathed a collective sigh of relief that the charge against Huey had been knocked down to manslaughter, thus averting the death penalty. Huey gave orders that the party should fight the guilty verdict in courts, not on the streets. An appeal was filed by Charles Gary and his longtime legal partner, Faye Stender, and we would have to wait for our leader to be vindicated in the courts. For me, that winter began with another benchmark of manhood. Tanya became pregnant. She called my mother to tell her before telling me. I actually found out from my father. Poppy told me, Aaron, you're going, in quotes, you're going to have to marry her, end quote. I replied, quote, no, I can't. I'm too young. end quote. Poppy's answer to me was, if you don't marry her, I would disown you. That was a heavy statement for him to make. I could not understand why Poppy was forcing me to do something for which I was ill prepared. But this was the way of my parents' generation. I remember that. Tanya's father, a nightclub owner, known for his hot temper, called me over to talk to him regarding the situation. He toyed with his 38 as he asked me questions of my intentions. Shortly thereafter, Tanya and I were married. Sounds like a shotgun wedding, doesn't it? Scroll it up, please.
Okay. How far? Right here.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Elmer and I made, thank you. Elmer and I made
Mhm.
a pact that he would interrupt the shotgun wedding. I remember standing at the altar in the church and I had grown up in, my back to the sparse crowd, wearing a new long black leather coat Tanya had bought for me, occasionally looking over my shoulder, waiting for Elmer to interrupt this crazy proceeding. But he never showed. For me, this was yet another omen that it was time to leave behind my childish ways and brace myself for adulthood. Up to that point, our losses in the party had been minimal. Our only incarcerated leader was Huey, and there were only a few martyred comrades. However, destiny in the form of the US government was rapidly moving to change both these statistics. Eldridge's departure from the party's leadership was imminent. Nicknamed Papa Rage, he had taken a guest lecturer position at UC Berkeley. Strange. And used it as a stage from which to launch a continuous verbal assault against Richard Nixon, whom Eldridge called Tricky Dick. And then the then governor of California, Ronald Reagan, whom he labeled Mickey Mouse. Eldridge even came out with an album, Dig, a recording of a speech given at Syracuse University during this 1968 presidential run as a candidate for the Peace and Freedom Party. Nationally, the Black Panther Party had formed a coalition with white liberal Peace and Freedom Party. The Peace and Freedom Party refused to recognize either the Democratic or Republican candidates, and instead nominated Panthers and other radicals for political office. For the 1968 national election, we collaborated with the Peace and Freedom Party to run Eldridge for president. In California, Bobby Seale, Kathleen Cleaver, and Huey Newton ran for local California political seats, while in Seattle, on the Peace and Freedom ticket, we ran two Panthers, Curtis Harris and E.J. Brisker, for legislative seats. We had a big campaign kickoff party on the top floor of the Sorrento Hotel, a classy place near downtown Seattle. Maud Allen, Nafasi, Kathy Haley, and other sisters did a magnificent job of organizing this event. Leave it to those sisters. It was a festival with hundreds of Peace and Freedom members, Freedom Party members, and Black Panther Party members and supporters. But despite all this successful momentum, a storm was brewing. It had begun in October with the murder of 17-year-old Welton Armstead. Welton, like many young Black disenfranchised youth, had dropped out of high school, unable to see or find the value in a racist educational system. He turned to crime and eventually found his way into the party. He participated from the fringes, supplying us with weapons and sometimes money when we needed it. On a cold autumn morning, Welton watched from the window of his third-floor apartment as the Seattle police cornered his mother in a parking lot below, crudely questioning her. Crudely now, that means rude. Questioning her about her son's whereabouts, talking to her any kind of way.
Yeah.
Welton grabbed his Winchester and ran to his mother's aid. He was gunned down. That's what they were preparing to do. Back by Seattle police as
Just
he
like
attempted
Bobby
to protect
Hutton.
his mother. And they still shooting us in the back.
Yeah,
the
they did that to
first
little
Seattle,
Bobby Hutton too.
yes, just killed a brother, Walton, shot him 46 times and got off just last week. 8 cops. Walton, but back to the story. Walton was the first Seattle Panther killed by the police, arousing an angry, violent retaliation. That same evening, 2 pigs, while answering an emergency call, were ambushed by 2 17-year-old Panthers. The pigs, despite being wounded, escaped death. Several days later, we buried Welton Armstead and attempted to console his grieving mother. The shooting left us bitter and angry. And Welton's death left a wound in his mother's heart that would never heal. Here I was 19 years of age at my 3rd Panther funeral, presiding over the death of a 17-year-old man-child, Welton Armstead, in a little dingy chapel, the family sitting and weeping, Panthers lining the walls. At that instant, standing in front of Welton's family, I felt an icy shield slowly cover my spirit. There would be no tears, no anguish, just a cold demeanor that slowly replaced the warm kindness I once carried. The Aaron my parents raised was now gone, but there would be many more dead comrades to bury, many more Panther funerals with stone-faced men and women, clenched fists thrust to the sky. Shortly after my July 1968 arrest for the stolen typewriter, a young Jewish woman from the Young Socialist Alliance suggested that I organize a defense committee around the case. The chapter's central staff agreed and began organizing a Free Aaron Dixon Defense Committee. A pamphlet entitled Hands Off Aaron Dixon was created. Speaking engagements were set up around the Pacific Northwest as well as in Chicago. I remember that. In Oakland, during one of my frequent visits, I talked with Eldridge Cleaver shortly before his exile. His long body sitting on the footsteps of St. Augustine's Church as he ate a plate of black-eyed peas, and I want some of them, oxtails, and cornbread from the soul food restaurant across the street. Aaron, he stated as he slowly ate, you have to be careful of those socialists. They like to use shit for their own purposes. You dig? I'm not saying the defense committee is a bad thing. It's a good idea. Just don't let them use you. Right on, Eldridge said. I assured him. That was my last conversation with Eldridge. Eldridge was facing the possibility that his parole for the April 6th shootout might be revoked by the state, which would mean he would have to return to San Quentin. This was not something Eldridge was prepared to do. He had stated many times that he was not going back to prison. One cover headline of the Black Panther read, "Damn pigs in prison." A vigil was set up at Eldridge's house in the Fillmore district of San Francisco. As the day drew near for him to report for his parole hearing in November, I was at his house with other Panthers armed, waiting for the pigs to come. But Eldridge was long gone. He chose exile in Cuba and Algeria rather than life in the dungeons of San Quentin. For those of us living in America, enduring in what Eldridge had coined as the belly of the beast, we would see our remaining leaders, one by one, killed off or in prison. In December, without my knowledge or approval, Panther Sidney Miller, a Chicago transplant, was ordered by Curtis Harris to rob a West Seattle store for what Sidney had been told was Panther business. In the process, Sidney was shot in the head by the store owner, dying instantly. At the time, the circumstances leading to his death were unknown, but eventually the details would all come to the surface. It was a travesty that should not have happened. That's true. Sidney was gregarious, happy-go-lucky comrade with an infectious smile, who was lied to about robbing the store. Everyone loved Sidney and his dedication. Yet it was this same blind dedication that led to his death. Not long thereafter, Sidney's killing, a young man named Larry Ward returned from Vietnam. A year older than me, during high school, Larry Ward ran with a fast crowd. He was one of the sharp dressers, and his hair was processed. Uh-oh. I was surprised. I was surprised to learn that after returning from Vietnam, he was interested in the revolution at home. Larry Ward reconnected with some of his buddies, old buddies, who had joined the party, and asked how he could join. Unfortunately, a couple of those old buddies were suspected of being police informants.
Oh,
Determined to put an end to the party's firebombing campaign, the Seattle Police Department had put out a $25,000 contract on my head. And since their attempts of my life had failed, they settled for setting up Larry Ward. Someone told Larry that if he firebombed our Castle Realty, he would be able to join the party. Sound right. The people who set him up told him that the Molotov cocktails would be waiting for him in the bushes. When Larry arrived to carry out his mission, the pigs came out of nowhere. A startled Larry raised his hands and the pigs opened up, shooting and killing him instantly. The pigs used 1-inch deer slugs, solid pieces of lead used mainly for hunting large wild game. Larry never had a chance to play the role of a revolutionary. Instead, he became a sacrificial victim. To make things worse, Lou Jack was wounded accidentally by another party member, resulting in the paralysis of his left arm. It was becoming more evident to me that there were many things happening in the Seattle chapter of which I had no knowledge, and many of these were extremely serious, life and death matters. Around this time, I began to feel a tremendous amount of pressure and to question the decisions I was making. I started drinking more often as I tried to sort out the problems in our chapter. I took another trip to Oakland, which always seemed to give me the strength to carry on. While meeting with Chairman Bobby, I mentioned my upcoming speaking engagement in Chicago that the socialists had set up. Aaron, when you go back there, I want you to check on some brothers who are starting a chapter, he said. Their names are Fred Hampton and Bobby Rush. Betty will get you their number. In early December, Bobby Harding, Jimmy Davis, and I were off to Chicago, where we stayed at my grandmother Dee Dee's house. Our first speaking engagement was at a high school near Cabrini Green, a housing project in the southwest part of the city. The place was packed, and there was a lot of excitement in the air about the party. The next day, we spoke at the small college north of Chicago. A few days later, we found ourselves at the University of Chicago on a chilly Wednesday evening. The auditorium was filled nearly to capacity with mostly Black students and others. I was pleasantly surprised to find I was sharing this speaking engagement with one of the brothers organizing the Chicago chapter, Fred Hampton. After I spoke, Fred Hampton, Bobby Rush, and about 8 other very rough-looking brothers took the stage. One of the brothers, Chaka Walls, carried a large African walking stick. The brothers assumed positions around the stage and secured the doors as Fred Hampton, a large husky brother with uncombed hair, wearing an army fatigue jacket, began to speak. He began, "Ain't nobody leaving this motherfucker until we finish." Fred Hampton spoke for the next 30 minutes. It was a rough, sharp speech that expressed the end of the rogue mentality that most young urban Blacks shared at the time. He said it was time to put the rhetoric and the analytical bullshit behind us. and he prepared to pick up guns and fight. My speech paled in comparison to the powerful words of this young Black man, my same age. I had no idea, nor did any of us at the time, that we were witnessing the next Malcolm X, the next Martin Luther King, and the essence of Fred Hampton was poised to become the next great leader of Black America. He and I talked briefly afterward and said we would try to hook up before I left, but a snowstorm prevented that from happening. We returned to Seattle to await my trial. Someone read The Purge. Black Power.
Black Power.
I'll read The Purge.
Okay.
People say, believe half of what you see, son, and none of what you hear. I can't help being confused. If it's true, please tell me, dear. Marvin Gaye, I heard it through the grapevine. After I returned from Chicago, I began preparing for the stolen typewriter trial. It was fortunate for me that a young, smart, dashing white attorney, a rising star in the legal community, came to my aid. William Dwyer was gaining a reputation as one of the smartest trial attorneys in the state. He came by the office in a dapper gray suit and offered his services to fight my case pro bono. He was not a political attorney like Mike Rosen, but he was very interested in making sure that justice prevailed. He invited Tanya and me over for dinner at his house. His beautiful Greek wife prepared many delicious meals to fuel our legal discussions. I went to trial in December of 1968. The prosecution in the case called 2 detectives who testified that they had observed me 7 days a week in the rain and the snow, that's the summer heat, and that they were certain they had seen me from almost a block away carrying a typewriter into the office. Bill Dwyer brought in a weather expert from out of state who nullified their testimony. However, the prosecutor's case hinged on the testimony of secret witnesses. We were all waiting for this secret witness, We were all waiting for this secret witness to show up. We knew there were some spies in the party, but we did not know who they were. Court took a 2-hour recess to give the prosecution enough time to present secret witness. I was facing 7 years, and with Tanya nearly 7 months pregnant and the movement facing mounting attacks, I was not prepared to leave the streets. Well, the secret witness never materialized, and I was found not guilty. We were all relieved at the verdict, but the identity of the secret witness remained a question. Bill Dwyer had saved me from almost certain prison time. He would go on to prove himself as one of the most important individuals in the fight for human and environmental rights in the state of Washington, eventually rising to a federal judgeship.
Wow.
On January 17, 1969, the Black Panther Party suffered one of its greatest losses. Alprentice Bunchy Carter, Deputy Minister of Defense of the Southern California chapter, and John Huggins, the Deputy Minister of Information, were murdered inside Campbell Hall on the UCLA campus in a conflict over student leadership of the Black Studies program at UCLA. The two party ministers were lending support to the BSU in its fight with Ron Karenga's United Slaves Organization, the US. But the direction of the Black Studies program, for the direction of the Black Studies program. US was one of the organizations that had come about after the Watts uprising. Its platform was based on Pan-African culture, cultural nationalism, and was opportunist in nature. Reportedly, they had even received money from the mayor of Los Angeles. The US plan for the Black Studies program had been voted down, but they continued to threaten the BSU, who asked the party for assistance. Before joining the party, Bunchy Carter, the mayor of the ghetto, as he was known, was the leader of the 5,000 strong Slossons, one of UCLA's biggest gangs. John Huggins was a bright and dedicated UCLA student who had moved with his wife, Erica, from Connecticut. Bunchy and John, along with others, had built the first chapter outside the Bay Area into one of the most powerful in the party, with a cadre of former gang members and a bright college students. The Southern California chapter was positioning itself to change the ratio and political balance of power in Los Angeles. The danger they presented to the status quo was immense. There was no way to the bastion of right-wing conservatism that was the Los Angeles Police Department would allow this to happen. The stakes were too high. The tactics they used for decades to keep Black and Latino communities in check were in danger of being turned against them. I had met Bunchy briefly at the national headquarters during the summer. An intense, sharply dressed sister named Elaine Brown had accompanied him. I remember how serious they both looked. I also remember how immaculately dressed Bunchy was, almost princely in his walk and mannerisms. Though I had never met John, his important contributions to the molding of the Southern California chapter were well known. So Bunchy and John were allegedly gunned down by the Steiner brothers, who were also allegedly members of the US and the Southern California chapter, were rival forces. And we would later learn that the FBI had been using tools of provocation, forged death threats, degrading political cartoons, and more to stoke the hostilities between the two groups leading up to the murders of Bunchy and John. When later that day, the Los Angeles comrades tried to regroup and retaliate, the pigs were there waiting for them in the alleyway of a comrade's home, arresting almost 30 Panthers and confiscating their weapons. National headquarters ordered the West Coast chapters to bring as many comrades as they could down to Los Angeles for the funeral and to serve as reinforcements. We left in 3 cars, one of which was a station wagon borrowed from Dr. Bodermer, my advisor at UW, University of Washington. I was traveling in the station wagon with 5 other Panthers, 3 of us in front and 3 in back. With no suitcases or bags, we drove straight through without stopping except for gas and food, taking speed to stay awake. As we passed into Southern California, we ran into a massive rainstorm on a stretch of highway known as the Grapevine that goes through the Tehachapi. I'm sorry, thank you. Tehachapi. I've never seen that before, the Tehachapi Mountains. All of a sudden, one of the tires blew out. The car began to swerve and the driver lost control. We careened all the way to the other side of the freeway into oncoming traffic. We covered our faces, certain that we would be hit. Instead, the car continued sliding off the road and went backwards over a cliff. About 20 yards down, the car got caught on a pipe sticking out of the rocks and came to a halt. Woo, lucky.
Mhm.
We all got out of the car without saying a word and climbed up the hill to the side of the freeway. In total shock and disbelief, we said very little, if anything, for a few minutes. It was another a reprieve from certain death. Some Panthers driving from Denver to Los Angeles, whom we had passed earlier, picked us up. We finally made it to the funeral. Many Panthers from the West Coast were in attendance. I remember that Panther Baby D from Marin County gave a eulogy for Bunchy. It was a very sad day, especially for those
Mhm.
in the Southern California chapter who knew Bunchy well and who recognized his significance to the party. It rained for the next 7 days, and some speculated that this was the God's way of expressing their anger over the death of one of
Mhm.
the most respected Black men on the streets of Southern California.
Yeah.
Bunchy wrote his prophetically haunting poem dedicated to his mother shortly before his assassination. I must confess that I still breathe, though you are not yet free. What could justify my crying start? Forgive my coward's heart. But blame not the sheepish me, for I have just awakened from the deep, deep sleep. And I be hazed and dazed and scarred, and vipers fester in my hair. Black mother, I curse you, your drudging years, the rapes and the heartbreak, sweat and tears. But this cannot redeem the fact that you cried in pain. I turned my back and ran into the Myers fog and watched while you were dogged and died 1,000 deaths. But I swear I'll see nights dark and gloom, a rose I'll wear to honor you. And when I fall the rose in hand, you'll be free, and I a man.
Mhm.
For a slave of natural death who dies cannot balance out 2 dead flies. That's from Mousy Tune. I'd rather be
Mhm.
without the shame, a bullet lodged within my brain.
Ooh.
If I were not to reach my goal, let bleeding cancer torment my soul. This is
Wow.
beautiful. Black
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Bunchy Carter, just before he passed away. It was murdered, rather. The Southern
Mhm.
California chapter never recovered from this loss. There would never be another Bunchy or another John Elmer. Elmer Geronimo Pratt, Vietnam vet, was named the new Deputy Minister of Defense, and Elaine Brown was named the new Deputy Minister of Information. Geronimo and Elaine continue to uphold the Southern California chapter as one of the most important in the party. After the funeral, the party arranged for the 6 of us to fly back to Seattle. As we had no car to face whatever the state had in store for us. In early spring of 1969, Washington state legislators had proposed a gun law aimed at preventing us from carrying our own weapons in the open. The legislation, largely a response to the Rainier Beach High School incident the year before, stated that it was illegal to carry a weapon capable of producing bodily harm in an intimidating manner. In protest, the Seattle chapter planned to send an armed delegation of Panthers to the Capitol in Olympia. At the time, my youngest brother, Michael, was working in the Capitol as a page for the state representative, David Sprague. the father of our childhood friend, Mark, and Paul Sprague. In a phone conversation, Michael warned me, man, the Highway Patrol and National Guard has set up 50 caliber machine guns nests and bunkers, and troops have been deployed to wait for you guys.
Wow.
They thought it was going to be a Panther invasion. We waited until the hysteria died down and then sent a reconnaissance scout to Olympia, who reported that the coast was clear. There were only about 9 of us, all under 18 except for Elmer and me. After the comrades got out of the cars with their rifles and shotguns, Elmer had then assumed formation on the Capitol steps, spread out in a line with their weapons pointed in the air. I entered the building with the aim of addressing the legislature, but was unable to do so. The piece of legislation passed, ending our phase of carrying our weapons out in the open. Another major development occurred in the spring of 1969, this one with much deeper implications. Huey sent a directive from the prison stating that any party member involved in or participating in any criminal activities was to be effectively expelled from the party. Thus began the purge. Since its inception, the Black Panther Party had attracted a rough breed of men and women into its ranks, particularly in the early days. Some were hustlers, ex-thieves, and crooks. These men had felt the direct effects of the police brutality. They had seen up close the crookedness and corruption of the police authorities. Huey and the party not only provided them with a vehicle to address their just grievances, but also allow them to play a role in building an organization dedicated to confronting the oppressor and protecting the community. The party gave them pride and confidence, a sense of power and purpose, things most of them had never tasted. Under Huey and Bobby, strict discipline and ideological correctness enabled many of the brothers to flourish. But with Huey's imprisonment and the party's explosive growth in the face of vicious attacks from the government, it was difficult to monitor and control all of the new additions to the organization. The party asked total commitment and dedication of its members. But there was no way in those early days, to provide comrades with money or essentials needed to survive. In some cases, comrades resorted to old habits infused with the power of the party. Some comrades took what they wanted when they wanted it or needed it, robbing stores or banks. In Seattle, the situation was worse. Willie Brazier, our lieutenant of education, was arrested for the robbery of a grocery store when he asked me where the bail money was. The puzzle pieces began to fall into place. Curtis Harris was one who had appointed himself assistant captain, had secretly formed an outlaw posse of the most illegally minded comrades. Under Curtis's direction, they engaged in armed robberies of banks and businesses. He told his posse most of the loot from the robberies was for the party and that he was turning it over to me. When I learned about this, I was totally thrown off guard. I had been utterly unaware of what was going on. The illegal activities went against the party, went against what the party was all about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they put a bad name on the party.
Yeah, they did. Nationally, in response to illegal activities conducted by the party members, Huey issued a decree calling for the expulsion of all members involved in criminal activities. Many people were expelled. Even Robert Bay had been involved in a holdup and was purged, to be later reinstated by Huey. In Oakland and elsewhere, the purge extended to comrades not involved in illegal activities, exiling many innocent party members due to paranoia and uneven hand of the Chief of Staff, David Hilliard. Some of the decisions made by David and his brother, Assistant Chief of Staff, June Hilliard, and his brother this was a male, June, eliminated some of the best soldiers from the ranks. If you even had a close association with purged party members, you in turn could be purged and exiled.
Oh.
One day, while at the office, I received a call from Tanya that some people were waiting to speak with me in the front of the house. While approaching the house, I saw a group of former Panthers from Oakland. 3 I considered to be very close comrades: Matalaba, Orlandier, Harrison, and Tommy Jones. We greeted each other and Tommy began to speak. David and June and the chairman are doing some fucked up shit. They assassinated one of our buddies who wasn't in the party. And when we spoke out about it, we got expelled. Ooh, this is rough.
Yeah, it is.
The Seattle branch, a lot of rough stuff. As I listened, I got a sick feeling in my stomach. I knew deep down inside these were some good, very good comrades, dedicated brothers and sisters. I also knew there was probably some truth to their accusations. Unfortunately for them, I had become hardened with the events of '68 behind me. I also was beginning to develop blindness to some things that did not quite seem right. I could not support their protests against the party. It was unclear to me exactly what they wanted me to do, but in the end, it was my commitment to the Black Panther Party that fueled my decision not to participate in their efforts to redress the expulsions. This interaction was a sad moment for me. Tommy had been like a big brother to me, and Orleander at 16 had accomplished Bobby and the other Panthers. Had accompanied Bobby and the other Panthers to the iconic demonstrations in Sacramento. We had all been together that night in West Oakland, less than a year earlier, backing down the cops at 7th and Wood. And Matalaba, the first woman to join the party, a sincere, soft, sweet, dedicated sister, fled Oakland, fearing for her life. She later joined the Nation of Islam in Chicago. The party would never be the same with these comrades and others dismissed from the ranks. I would never see Orleander Harrison again. Tommy and Matalaba, I would see only many years later. But I could not linger for long on these losses. I faced difficult decisions in Seattle, decisions that I was reluctant to make. Section leader Bobby Yates, Curtis's right-hand man, had robbed a Safeway, jumping through a glass window in his escape, only to be captured. Curtis had even conspired with the president of Seattle's first Black-operated bank in a robbery scheme in which 4 Panthers robbed the bank and then split the money with the bank president. Oh, shit. Excuse me.
That's horrible.
Woo, that's rough. A week later, they robbed another bank, which led to a wild chase and a shootout, ending in the arrest of the renegades. All the participants were expelled from the party, including Lou Jack and Willie Brazier. At one time, 2 of my closest friends and most trusted comrades. Lou Jack received 20 years and was sent away to federal prison in Oklahoma, never to see freedom again. He died in a knife fight in prison. Willie also received a 20-year sentence and was imprisoned at nearby McNeil Island. Oddly enough, Curtis went free after doing a day in jail. I sent Elmer and a goon squad to Curtis's house to administer a good ass kicking to that fool. As they were leaving, Curtis ran out to his front porch with a pistol, ranting like a madman. A shot was fired back at him, barely missing Curtis's head. Death would have been his end. He did a tremendous amount of damage to the Seattle chapter, tarnishing our image forever in the minds of many people. These are some of my most difficult times. Comrades I had counted on to assist me in building the Seattle chapter had either been expelled or left on their own out of fear, or were disappointed and disillusioned. I had started drinking more, relying on the alcohol to pull me through, to give me some courage to face another day. There was one bright light during the dismal times. On April 15th, 1969, my first child, Aaron Patrice Lumumba Dixon, was born into the world. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like.
We're going to read some more. We're going to kind of discuss what we've read.
Yeah, we need some discussion time put in.
Okay.
I just want to say that I did not know that there was brothers and mainly brothers, doing robbing and doing negative stuff like that throughout the party, because that is not what the party was about.
Yes, that's correct.
So I feel like maybe some of them might have been working with the police as infiltrators to help them get a bad name to the parties.
Right. One of the things that the police did was to try to criminalize the Black Panther Party. And make it look like it was a criminal organization. That was one of the things that the police did a lot of. And I mean, they just pulled us around and put in the newspaper that we were criminals. Now, there wasn't that kind of robbery and stuff going on in New York, thank goodness, in Harlem, the Harlem branch, because we was too busy trying to get our papers sold and do all the programs and accommodate all the actions that was taking place. The students were taking over the university, like Columbia University. The workers were where I was at. The workers were taking over the hospital. There's a lot of stuff going on, so the Black Panther Party had to attend to all of that activity that was going on in New York. So there was not robberies, although there were some people from the street that came in, and Lumumba Shakur had to pour up like a pound of heroin down the sewer. So
does anybody else have some input? Comrade Chi, Joe? You muted, Conrad. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I got a little something to say. I was in Seattle, Washington, about a month and a half ago for like a little over a month. So there's a lot of strength out there, and it was real nice. I got to meet one of the original Black Panther sisters at a thrift store that I had went to from that area, from that time period. And you also mentioned Southern California. You also mentioned Denver, Colorado, in certain areas. But what's a shame is what we're reading about and what we're listening to is that whole COINTEL, it still exists today. And we definitely have to tread cautiously, brothers and sisters, because it's no joke. There's infiltrators all over. And we, as revolutionary comrades, we have to protect one another. And especially when it comes to working with the masses, it's hard. It's hard. So definitely appreciated tonight's reading. And there's other points that I have in my head, but like, let me let someone else say something.
Conrad
But
Chief?
good reading.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You know, in all my years of being educated by Panthers in prison, I never heard about that, man. All the negative stuff that was happening, you know, with some people. I don't even consider, I'm sorry to say it, but I don't even consider them Panthers. You know, I think many of them were infiltrators, you know, and they were trying to give the party a bad reputation, and they did. You know, they were successful in doing that. You know, and I think that's, I mean, amongst other things, the police even gave the police the more justification to do what they did and begin killing Panthers. You know, I mean, not that they wasn't going to do it, but they was going to do it. And the police intention was to kill Panthers, you know, through the COINTELPRO. But that kind of activity gave them the more keys and more fire, you know, to do what they did to the Panthers. And I'm sorry, man, that I'm sorry that as a result, you know, the Panther Party, which I loved with all my heart, and I still do, you know, were you know, given a bad reputation, man. You know.
Right.
That was solid talk, brother. Like Fred P. Hampton said, I am a revolutionary. But collectively, we are revolutionaries. We have to draw to attention to ourselves that we are martyrs. We are today's martyrs. And we can never forget those that have been wrongfully imprisoned. Throughout the years, the whole school to prison pipeline, the whole subjugation of keeping us down, keeping us separate, keeping us fighting one another's within our communities. That the white man has done a good job, and the oppressor has done a good job of that. But it's up to us to collectively stand together in solidarity and move past that.
Right. And organize.
And organize and collectively share one another's experiences, because what happens in our communities affect all of us as a whole.
Right.
Whatever
Thank you,
color we
Conrad.
are.
Right.
That's all.
Thank you, Conrad Joe. I see
You're
a hand is raised. Brother Ocean. I can't pronounce your name, but I see your hand is raised.
You can call me Sayero. Sayero. But you can see the returning of the same consequences, because COINTELPRO is still alive and kicking today.
Right.
There are always infiltrators. And just as, you know, that was so enlightening to me, what went on in Seattle with the bank robberies and the illegal activities. That was not what the party was based on. But when you even went to prison, the discipline for some went out the window. And so when you look at our demise, it is basically us that are our own demise, you know, because we don't want to stay focused. We're going to always have infiltrators. We're going to have those. The fact is that we got to keep it moving, and we got to do it as a cadre. You know, this thing that's going on right now is so ferocious. It seems like nothing's changed from '69 to the day.
Right.
The mass murders and killings of black skin. You look at the mass murders and killings of brown skin. At the theft of resources that are continual in this pattern of slavery called the colonial mode of production that we live in. Well, I believe too, studies like this, these are really great and important studies, because you not only get the history, you can identify with it, even to this day, if you weren't born in 1960 or born in the 50s, you can relate to it because the same things are occurring today, even in the hearts. I don't think there's anyone Black that is oppressed anywhere that does not want to see change. But the fact of the matter is, with this intrusion of the media, the justice system that's injustice, the Department of Justice, the FBI, CIA, they're ever present because they will not easily give up what they stole. And they stole everything. They stole the country. They stole us, put us in slavery and bondage. Will never. Now, if we think that they're going to pass some legislation to give anybody reparations, I think we're sadly mistaken.
And
Right
they
now-
stole our labor for free, got free labor from us
Right.
for 400 years.
Most definitely. And I'm going to round it out by finishing up with this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Comrade Cleo,
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Because that's a true statement. The fact of the matter is, we're going to have to be collective now. We saw the mistakes made of the past. We have to now begin to button up for the present and the future. And we do have a lot of very smart young people, wise young people, that if you look around, they're beginning to join because they're tired of it.
Right.
We got internationally, we have Africans, we have Cubans, we have countries that are ready to band with us, but we have to get prepared ourselves. And,
Right.
and then when you see sellouts, you got to walk past them. We got to organize, and we got to be stronger than our endeavors because right now life is in the balance. Uhuru. I love everybody on this call because this was a powerful reading. It brought
Yes.
back tears and time. I just want to say Uhuru and Black Power. Thank you.
Black Power, thank you. Thank you, older comrades too, for just, paving the way for younger people like myself and teenagers. I just want to thank you guys for who you are and what you've done for the revolution.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any more comments? All right, well, I guess we will end the session. Thank everybody for coming and all power to the people.
Power to the people.
And all power to
Power
the
to the
people.
people.
Power to the
Vanguard up.
Vanguard up.
Africa. Yes.
Stay strong, brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Power
We
to the
got
Love
this.
you. Thank you.
We definitely got this.
Yep.
Shay, you come on back now. Joe too.
Yo, brother.
Yeah.
Right on, man. All right, one
Peace
love.
and power.
And
Yeah,
thank you,
one
Brother
love.
Jay. It was nice to meet you, Brother Joe. It was nice to meet you. Sister
Likewise.
Dot. It was nice to meet you, Serene. Very nice to meet you. My other comrades I know.
I think
Everybody,
Joe had
good
one more
night.
thing he wanted to say. Joe,
Free
did
the
you have something?
land, free the land,
Free the land. Yeah.
All power to
Right
the
on.
people. All right, I say
Good
peace,
night,
brothers.
everybody. I say.